So you might be wondering, what do you do at these mamas group? What do you do when you go to the recovery class? And we start off by reading. Well, we first introduce ourselves, and sometimes we'll say a spot, which is a tool that we use that week to help us. Sometimes we just tell a symptom of how we were feeling that week, and then we jump into reading. We read for probably like 10 minutes, 15 minutes from Abraham Loeb's books. And first thing I want to tell you too is when I started going to this group, I was a rebel when it came to rules and structure. And in fact, that's one of the reasons why I didn't want to go to BYU, because I did not like rules and somebody telling me what I can and can't do. But I was at such a hard time in my life that I'm like, okay, let me give this a chance. Maybe this is going to help. And it does. It really helps to have the structures and the rules and the safety. And so after we read, then we go through examples. You know, people that are having a hard time will share an example, and it's very outlined. We have an outline that we follow and steps that we follow to explain what was working us up. And then after we go through those steps, then the person that gave the example has to control their speech muscles and be very quiet and just listen as the group spots on it. And spots are tools. They are little sentences from Abraham Loeb's books that will retrain our brain from a negative, vicious cycle into a positive, vitalizing cycle that helps us to move on, to get out of bed. I was struggling so much not wanting to get out of bed, and this class gave me the tools to get my butt out of bed, and I'm so thankful for it. So I'll go over the outline with you. Step 1, we report a single situation or event that occurred, an everyday event when you began to work yourself up. Focus on a brief description of what happened, specifically what triggered temper and symptoms. When learning to give an example, simply be simple and clear in these 4-step sequence is an important part of the method. The best way to learn is to practice constructing and giving a good average example. And here are some more basic things to use to work on. So step 1, the other part of step 1 is when describing the situation or event, be clear but brief. It's tempting to go into a lot of background and detail, but this is usually unnecessary and even distracting. Practice focusing on just a few sentences of basic information that will clarify the situation or event that generated your symptoms or discomfort. Notice in the sample examples how the descriptions in step 1 are both brief and precise. And then we go to step 2. So step 1, we report a situation really brief and specific. And in step 2, we report the symptoms that you experienced, both physical and mental. For instance, angry and fearful thoughts, confusion, palpitations, disturbing impulses, tightness in your chest, lowered feelings, sweaty palms, and so on. And we call that step our TIFs. T stands for thoughts, I stands for impulses, F stands for feelings, S stands for sensations. We remember TIFs so that we can remember to get all 4 of those in that step. People often skip this step to get to step 3, spotting. However, while this step, like others, should be kept brief, an important part of the recovery method is learning to be objective in recognizing and describing physical and mental responses. This objectivity makes those responses seem less threatening and overwhelming. Avoid diagnosing, I became paranoid, and spotting. That comes in the next step. Just describe your physical and mental sensations. For example, I felt flushed and angry, my head hurt. So that's step 2, TIFs. Step 3, we report the spotting of fearful and or angry temper and the recovery tools that you use to help yourself and your self-endorsement for your effort. So in recovery, we do this thing called endorse. Endorse means a mental pat on the back, like a high five for our efforts. In step 3, we're identifying the recovery tools, the spots that helped you deal with your symptoms. Stay focused on recovery language and concepts. Avoid mixing in material from other methods. Be clear about how the spots apply to the symptoms and event. But don't worry about using every possible tool. Often just one or a few are all that you need for the example. So that's step 3, spotting of the tempers and spotting and using the tools that helped you help yourself. And so step 4, we go on to begin with before I had my recovery training and describe the temperamental reaction and symptoms you would have experienced in former days. What would have happened then versus what happened now? This will help you to note the progress you've made. A crucial part of getting well through this will training comes when you see how you've improved using this method. This step is important in helping us see that improvement. So those are the steps. And I just would like to share with you a couple of my favorite spots that have helped me. And my favorite is that our minds are for hoping, planning, and dreaming, not doom, gloom, and despair. And there's hundreds and thousands of them in his books. And another one that we say in our house is humor is our best friend and temper is our worst enemy. And my son has been able to change that because I say that's the official recovery tool. And so his version is laughing is good for us. My son, I'd like to tell you a little story about my son. This was when he was in first grade and they were out at recess. He'd come home and told me this story about when he was out at recess and he saw one of his friends standing out away from everybody that was playing and just feeling down. And my son went up to him. This was one of his good friends, and went up to his friend and said, "Hey, what's the matter?" And this boy said, "Nobody likes me. I don't have any friends." And my son put his arm around him and said, "That's not true. I'm your friend." And he reminded his friend, he's like, "Remember at my birthday party? How many people were so excited to see you and playing with you? This boy likes you. This is another friend." And he was just naming off all of these friends, and it just cheered his friend up. And my son was able to help this boy secure his thoughts about himself and cheered him up, and then they were off playing and that's one thing that I've been trying to teach my son is secure. I'm trying to secure my thoughts about myself. And I notice when he, is struggling with that too, and I help him, and it makes me so happy when I hear how he's using it to help others. And this reminds me of another little story. My son and my husband don't know much about recovery, just little bits that I share with them. And so one time my husband was on a trip. He goes to conventions, to different comic conventions. And one time he was up in his room, his hotel room. There was a party downstairs in the lobby, and he was too nervous to go down to the party. And he was just panicking, and his breathing was racing. I'm sure his heart was too, and he was just so nervous and so scared and having a panic attack. And I didn't go through all 4 steps with him, but I was able to get out my recovery list of spots, and I just started reading them off. And he started feeling better. Like there were some that would stick out to him, and he'd talk a little bit about them, and then would just keep reading. And it's like less than 5 minutes, and then he was feeling better and saying, "Erin, thank you so much for helping." And he was able to have the confidence and feel good to go downstairs and be with all these other awesome creators. So it works.